I've never been one that's able to travel light. I mean, I've tried, believe me, I've tried. But ever since I stuck 3 fingers in the air and took the Boy Scout pledge to be prepared, I've always determined to be exactly that. Always prepared. Be it for a bar mitzvah or a baby dedication or even a costume party. Prepared to parachute behind enemy lines or to enter into a cricket tournament. And if perchance the Dalai Lama might be on my flight and invite me to dine in Tibet, I always carry snowshoes. I mean, one has to be prepared. So I don't know how to travel light. The fact is, there's a lot about traveling I don't know. I don't know why they don't build the whole plane out of the same metal they used to build that indestructible little black box. I don't know how to escape the airplane toilet without sacrificing one of my extremities to the jaws of the folding door. I don't know what to say to guys like the taxi driver in Guatemala who learned I was an American and asked if I knew his cousin Eddie who lives in the U.S. There's a lot about traveling I don't know. I don't know why we men would rather floss a crocodile than ask for directions. I don't know why vacation slides aren't used to treat insomnia. I don't know when I'll learn not to eat foods whose names I just can't pronounce. But most of all, I don't know how to travel light. I don't know how to travel without granola bars and sodas and a rain gear. I don't know how to travel without flashlights and a generator and a global tracking system. I don't know how to travel without an ice chest of hot dogs. I mean, what if I stumble upon a backyard barbecue? To bring nothing to the party would just be, well, rude. I need to learn to travel light. And you're wondering why I can't. Loosen up, you're thinking. You can't enjoy a journey carrying so much stuff. Why don't you just drop all that luggage? Well, funny you should ask, because I'd like to ask the same question to you. Haven't you been known to pick up a few bags? Odds are you did this morning. Somewhere between the first step on the floor and the last step out the door, you grabbed some luggage. You stepped over to the baggage carousel and loaded yourself up. You don't remember doing so? That's because you did it without thinking. Don't remember seeing the baggage terminal? That's because the carousel is not the one in the airport. It's the one in your mind. And the bags we grab are not made of leather. They're made of burdens. The suitcase of guilt. The sack of discontentment. You drape the duffel bag of weariness over one shoulder and hang the bag of grief on the other. Add to that a backpack of doubt, an overnight back of loneliness, and the trunk of fear. And pretty soon you're pulling more stuff than a sky cap. No wonder you're so tired at the end of each day. Lugging luggage is exhausting. And what you were saying to me, God says to you, set that stuff down. You're carrying burdens that you don't need to bear. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. See, if we let Him, God will lighten our loads. But how do we let Him? Can I invite you to an old friend of mine? He'll show us. It's King David in the 23rd Psalm.
shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Do more beloved words exist? I mean, these are framed and hung in hospital halls, scratched on prison walls, quoted by the young and whispered by the dying. In these lines, sailors have found a harbor, the frightened have found a father, and strugglers have found a friend. And because the passage is so deeply loved, it's also widely known. Can you find ears on which these words have never fallen? They've been set to music in 100 songs, translated into 1,000 tongues, domiciled in 1,000,000 hearts. And one of those hearts might be yours. What affinity do you feel when you hear these words? Well, where do these verses transport you? To a fireside? To a bedside? Maybe to a graveside? Hardly a week passes that I don't turn to them. See, this passage is to the minister what balm is to the physician. I recently applied them to the heart of a dear friend, summoned to his house with the words that the doctors aren't giving him more than a few days. I looked at him and understood. His face was pale, his lips stretched and parched, skin draping between bones like an old umbrella cloth between spokes. The cancer had taken so much, his appetite, his strength, his days. But the cancer hadn't touched his faith. Pulling a chair to his bed and squeezing his hand, I whispered, "Bill, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." He rolled his head toward me as to welcome the words. I continued, "He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake." Reaching the 4th verse, fearful that he might not hear, I leaned forward until I was just a couple inches from his ear. And I said, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." He didn't open his eyes, but he arched his brows. He didn't speak, but his thin fingers curled around mine. And I wondered if the Lord was helping him maybe set down some luggage, the fear of dying. Do you have some luggage of your own? Do you think God might use David's psalm to lighten your load? Traveling light means trusting God with the burdens that you were never intended to bear. Why don't you try traveling light? Try it for the sake of those you love. Have you ever considered the impact of excess baggage on relationships? See, I envision doing a little film of a drama in which a wedding is reenacted, in which we hear the thoughts of the bride and groom throughout the ceremony. It would begin with the groom entering from a side, and he's laden with luggage. A bag dangles from every appendage, and each bag is labeled with guilt, anger, arrogance, insecurities. And this fellow is just loaded. And he comes and he stands before the altar, and the audience, the viewers, can hear his thinking. Finally, a woman will help me carry all my burdens. Oh, she's so strong. She's so stable. And his thoughts continue as hers begin. She enters wearing a beautiful wedding gown. Just like her fiancé, she's covered with luggage. She's pulling a hanging bag, shouldering a carry-on, hauling a makeup kit, a paper sack, everything you could imagine, and everything is labeled. And she has her own bags, prejudice, loneliness, disappointments, and her expectations. And she begins walking down the aisle, and you begin to hear her thoughts. Oh, in a few more minutes, I've got a man. No more counselors, no more group sessions. So long. Discouragement and worry. I won't be seeing you anymore. He is going to fix me. So finally, the couple is together there at the altar, but they're lost in a mountain of luggage. They smile their way through the ceremony, and when they're given the invitation to kiss each other, they can't. I mean, how can you embrace someone if your arms are full of bags? You see, for the sake of those you love, learn to set them down. And for the sake of the God you serve, do the same. He wants to use you, you know. But how can he if you're so exhausted? This truth came home to me the other afternoon. I was getting ready to go on a bike ride. Preparing for the ride, I couldn't decide what to wear. I mean, it was kind of cold out and the wind was blowing. The sky was clear, but they said it might rain. Should I take a jacket? Should I wear a sweatshirt? So the Boy Scout in me prevailed. I wore both. And I grabbed my phone, and nobody was home, so to get back in the house, I had to take my keys. And as a precaution against thirst, I grabbed 2 water bottles. And now, I've gotten stuck with a flat tire before, and with nobody there to go pick me up, I grabbed my pump and a spare tire just in case. And, you know, maybe I wanted to call a cab if it started to rain, so I grabbed some money and I took that as well. And you know what? I looked like a pack mule more than a cyclist. And within a mile, man, I was peeling off the jacket and putting my stuff in it and hiding it in a bush. I mean, that kind of weight can just slow you down and exhaust you. And what's true in a bike ride is true in faith. God has a great race for you to run. And under His care, you will go where you've never been and serve in ways you've never dreamed. But you have to drop some stuff. How can you share grace if you're filled with guilt? How can you offer comfort if you're disheartened? How can you lift someone else's load if your arms are filled with your own? For the sake of those you love, travel light. For the sake of the God you serve, travel light. For the sake of your own joy, travel light. There are certain weights in life you simply cannot carry. And the Lord is asking you to set them down and to trust Him. He is the father at the baggage claim. When the dad sees his 5-year-old son trying to drag the family trunk off of the carousel, what does he say? The father will say to his son what God says to you. Set it down, child. I'll carry this one. What do you say we take God up on His offer? We just might find ourselves traveling a little lighter. Oh, and by the way, I might have overstated my packing problems. I don't usually take snowshoes with me. But I can't overstate God's promise. He says, unload all your worries onto Him, since He is looking after you. God bless you guys.